The UFC calendar year, as we know it, has come to a close, and I figured I'd go ahead and put out my personal ranking of all 13 pay-per-views that took place this year. We had a lot of good pay-per-views, nothing really bad in comparison to, say, previous years. We've had some pretty bad pay-per-views in the history of the UFC, but in 2025 alone, I don't think we had any that were horrible, just some that weren't really delivering in the ways we thought they would, or maybe we just knew they wouldn't deliver and they did. And it was pretty tough making this list because, these rankings aren't concrete. Like, things can move probably two spots up or down, honestly, depending on how you value a card. I tried to have a good mix of name value, fight outcomes, what was on the line, like legacy. Was there a beef leading up to it? Was a last minute opponent? Like I'm not gonna break down every fight on the card, but I'm just gonna call out some highlights of each card as we're going through them and looking at them, and just discuss why I think it's in the position it's in. Anyways, before we jump in, if y'all could just please leave a like on this video, drop a subscription, drop a comment if you enjoy, drop your own ranking. If I'm an idiot, tell me why, and if you believe that my pay-per-view was in the complete wrong end of my ranking, then tell me why. I'd love to hear these different opinions. But yes, please like, subscribe, share if y'all enjoy this content. Let's go ahead and get into it with the technically worst, but it's not bad in any means. Like, these are all very good pay-per-views, but the lowest ranked pay-per-view, in my opinion, of 2025 is UFC 312. Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. Now, this was a good card. I said this to begin with. They're all good cards. It just didn't do that much for us. There was a good main event. Dricus du Plessis cemented his win over Sean Strickland. This was a rematch, and he, I think, beat him 50-45. It meant a lot. Zhang versus Suarez kind of was this hyped matchup as the striker versus the Olympian. I don't know if she was Olympian, but like a very high-level wrestler. And that fight just did not deliver. Suarez looked elementary, and her wrestling was very disappointing. And just the name value on the main card brought it down entirely. Tafa versus Teixeira. Like, Tafa brothers in the big 2025 should have never been there in the first place. Crew versus Bellotto. Like, they were scrounging names for this pay-per-view. I think it was in Canada. It wasn't coming together that well. There were some hidden bangers on here. Salkid versus Jubilee do not redeem. Colby Thicknesse versus Alexandre Topuria. That put a lot of stock behind Topuria, as well as Thicknesse for being a short notice, opponent. I think this was Jack Jenkins' comeback after breaking his arm against Shep Mariscal. So there was some heart in that for me. And these were all good fights that delivered, but pretty low in name quality. If a Tafa brothers on the main card, it's probably not the strongest of them. Again, not a bad card. Most of these fights did deliver in some way or another. And there were good names on here. It just doesn't hold up to the other 12 on this list. But yeah, worst place goes to UFC 312. We're going to move on to the 12th spot. UFC 313, we go up one. Magomed Ankalaev versus Pereira, the first one, with a co-main of Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. Now, again, a card not full of name value. Some good moments. We have a current flyweight champion, Joshua Van, on the prelims of this card. That was a really good fight against Ray Tasuria. The spinning kick against Green was legendary from Huffy. Like, this was a very good card. Turner versus Bahamondes did go to a decision. I think Lemos versus Lucindo did as well. I think all of these fights on the main card, except for Huffy, went to a decision. Granted, 3 rounds, but a lot of them were kind of boring tit for tat. You did have the big controversy of Curtis Blades versus, Rizvan Kuniev, but Kuniev was also a steroid cheat, so that kind of left me with a sour taste in my mouth. And, Petrosian, Ferreira, Moreno, Leal, those are good fights. Those are known guys, but it just doesn't hold up that well. And the main event didn't deliver, I'll be honest. Gaethje versus Fiziev. I think this was a rematch last minute. It didn't make any sense. Is this a rematch, or did they already? I'm not sure. My body's telling me it was a rematch, like, from memory. Like, this was a very last-minute thing. But I could be wrong. I swear they fought twice. But if they fought once, I'm just an idiot. Yeah, but Pereira versus Ankalaev was boring. Pereira said he was sick. Like, it was just a sour taste in the fans' mouth to end the card with. That boring fight. Magomed just kind of clinching him. He didn't get any takedowns in that fight. I think he went 0 for 11. Again, just not the strongest in name value, and a lot of fights didn't deliver in the way we wanted them to. So not a bad card by any means. Gaethje versus Fiziev, banger. Green versus Huffy, I think potential knockout of the year, in all honesty. Good card, just doesn't hold up. We move on to the 11th pick. It's UFC 321. I think we all kind of know why this is as far up as it is on the list, but we'll start from the bottom. Barnett versus Abdel Wahab was such a bad fight that both men got cut after the fight, but you did have some sneaky ones in there. Walter Walker getting the heel hook. I think that was his 4th one over Louis Sutherland. You had Sal Kild's crazy head kick KO over Hackparast right after John Adik. And his parents own a bakery, just gets slept out cold. Great stuff there. The main card, before the main and co-main, it was a good card. You had Mirzakhanov absolutely murk Rakic. I got that pick wrong, but it was an insane knockout, I think, round 1. You had the UFC judges finally using the cerebral cortex, and Volkov versus Almeida prioritizing damage over wrestling, or at least just grappling. They gave a lot of fans hope in the scoring criteria fights. You had Bautista give Nurmagomedov a really tough fight. He even knocked him down. I think it kind of made us happy to know that Nurmagomedov wasn't going to get an immediate title shot after getting one win after losing bad to Merab. You could, and we'll get to that card. It's on here. Not bad. I take that back. But yeah, I kind of liked that Nurmagomedov didn't look too good against Batista because now he's taking another fight there. So this card did have some good moments, but then you get to the co-main, and it was an entertaining fight, but a co-main of Jandiroba versus Dern is getting nobody hype. This was because Zhang moved up to fight Valentina in an upcoming card on this list. And we all know how the main event went. We're not even going to get into that. And we're still ongoing with that drama today and not really knowing the situation and what's going to happen. But yeah, just not like if this was the last fight we saw of the night and it wasn't good, and this is how the night ended, and it just was not great. So again, good card. There was some good fights on here. Raposo had a good scrap with Maxim. Wood had a good scrap with Delgado. I mean, Aliscaro versus Park, they had a scrap. They did gas out. It was kind of funny, but good card in terms of the finishes that it had. The moments it had just had a very bad end to it. A lot of these cards are going to have something like that, but we're slowly getting out of what the bad end was. Like, Aspinall versus Gano is a really good fight to end the night in, but it's how it went, obviously. So this takes the 11th spot. We move on to the top 10 spot, UFC 318. I feel like some people are really disagreeing with me on this one. This is really strong of a card. Holloway versus Poirier. That was a banger fight. Personally, though, it made zero sense. Poirier was 2-0 over Holloway. He should have chased the Gaethje rematch. They were 1-1, both spectacular knockouts. It was a good fight, but the setting of it wasn't much. It was kind of heartbreaking to see Dustin just get outboxed on the feet. He didn't really get slept or choked out and vice versa, but it was just kind of a sad way to see a legend go off. You know, you want to see him against someone that you're 100% going to root for him to beat. But with Holloway both being a fan favorite along with Poirier, it was like a heartbreaking win for Holloway because you knew it meant that was the last of Poirier's career. So that really hurt fans. And then the rest of the card was decisions. Johnson versus Cell Huber, I think, was like an Unk still got it decision. Ige versus Pitbull, that was Holland lost, not controversially, but he lost to Rodriguez, and we thought Holland was going to destroy him. I don't know if he was off, but Rodriguez won this fight, and then I think got arrested in Mexico and hasn't fought since or even been out. I don't really know. We haven't heard from him. And Costa Kopylov was a good scrap, but it went to a decision. Like, the fights just didn't deliver on the main card. Actually, all fights on the main card went to a decision. That's kind of why I have it where it is. The prelims were good, though. Phillips versus Oliveira was a good scrap. Vittori versus Allen was kind of a rock for a brain fest. I don't really remember Prado versus Varetnikov. Gautier, slimed out Valentin. Valentin's always going to be a lamb to the slaughter, and Gautier just gets laid up opponents. Still a good opening card, though. I know the model Dulatov got the win over Adam Fugit. Krut Prachnio was a good fight. I think Prachnio got slept out cold after putting up a good round against Krut. It was just a good card, prelims and early prelims, but the main card, good fights, good names and all, just didn't deliver the way that most people thought it would. You'd assume Holland would finish Rodriguez. Costa would finish Kopylov. Maybe Poirier would land a shot on Holloway and hurt him and put him away. And it just didn't deliver the way we wanted it to. So, again, still a great card. I have it at my number 10 spot. We move on. I could not find a clear UFC image of this card because there had been so many changes to it, and it was just blurry. So, shout out Combat Sports, guys. This was the image I found that was clear. UFC 319 is my number 9 pick. It had some good opening fights. Green versus Fajea didn't happen. Ruzaboa versus Battle didn't happen because he missed weight, so that kind of dragged the card down. But we had Barboza versus Close. I think Close got the finish over Barboza or had a decisive decision, so that was pretty entertaining. Oleanek, I can't remember how to say his name. It's not Oleanek because that's the other guy. But Mearshart lost. I think he got slept pretty badly by his opponent. Andrade versus Godinez, I cannot remember that. Chase Hooper had a close fight with Alexander Hernandez, who just, edged him out in decision with the wrestling, more aggressive striking. I think Silva beat Aldrich by, comfortable decision, but the main card did deliver mostly until we get to the main event. That's kind of why I have this card as high as I do, because you had Prates versus Jeff Neal. I think this was Prates coming off of the Ian Gary loss, and we really wanted to see him back in form. In hindsight, Ian Gary's very good, which kind of sucks because his personality is not the best, but Prates came back, had a good scrap against Neal, and got the spinning elbow, sliced him open KO. It was a beautiful KO by Carlos Prates. That was a good way to open the main card. You look at Cannonier versus Page, a decision, but Page had the damage. He was mocking him. You had the upset in Elliott versus Asakura, got the sub, showing that Asakura wasn't that good. Kind of pulling some legacy from Pantoja, but still. And then two spinning elbows on this card. Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. Pico was looking good. He was kind of beating up on Murphy, and then he got predictable. Murphy trapped him in, baited him, and Pico was aggressively charging him against Cage. Spinning elbow slept. But the main event stunk up this card because the prelims weren't strong. The main card was getting strong. And then say what you want about grappling domination. I'm a grappler at base. It's boring when you're going to decisively, pin your opponent down, but never work to submit him. You never really put him in any danger. Anything he did that threatened danger was just to stop his advancement, and he wouldn't give any inch to go for danger against Duplessis because it would give him space to buck or peel himself out of situations or just move positions, which could have gotten back to his feet. So it was kind of a boring stalling fest, I felt like, from Khamzat Chimaev, and we've yet to even see him talk about a potential fight. And he calls out everybody after they win that's 2 divisions above and below him. He's talking about moving up to light heavyweight. And then he comes out and says he's not going to fight after Ramadan. So this guy never shuts up about fighting, and he doesn't do it, So overall, I went on a bit of a tangent there. Jesus, sorry. But yeah, those were the implications when Khamzat won. It was a boring win, and the middleweight division is cooked. You know what I mean? And he keeps calling out Alex Pereira. We're not letting you ruin 205, little bro. Stay down there. If you try to put on that much weight, you might get sick. So yeah, that kind of stunk up the card in the beginning of it. Wasn't too good to be honest either. We had a lot of fights fall through that could have been bangers. So it's really not a strong card, but just the finishes that did happen had a lot of hype behind them. Hence why I have it this high. If there was maybe one less finish, it would be 2-3 spots lower in my opinion. But the upset of Asakura losing, Murphy's crazy second spinning elbow of the card, Page's antics, and Prates' spinning elbow, that definitely generated the hype needed to get this card where it is. So yeah, spot number 9. We move on to number 8. It's UFC 311, the first one of the year. Decent early prelims. I mean, Tercios versus Sopaja was a scrap. Ulanbekov versus Carpenter was a scrap. Nakamura versus Gafarov was a scrap. I think Perez got the sub in this one. I want to say Ferreira Chin Dawson, let me take that back. I don't know how that fight went. You had good names. You did see Talbot get fraud checked, which wasn't good for the hype of Talbot, but it was good for the hype of the card because it was like, whoa, a crazy up and coming guy got fraud checked that had a young fan base and kind of a personality behind him. We saw Rainer de Ritter kind of break into the welterweight division, showing that he's better than just that mediocre level when he subbed Kevin Holland with the rear naked round 1, round 2, I think after a crazy scramble. We're not going to talk about Almeida. He sucks. Prohaska versus Hill is like the gem. And Prohaska's on like 2 or 3 of the cards in the top 10 here. He brings the card's value up tenfold just because his fight style. I mean, Prohaska versus Hill was a banger. Both guys, I think, were coming off losses to Alex or just losses before that, and they needed this. And it was a close fight at the beginning. Hill was looking good, but Prohaska started to pick it up. There's a storm, he says, and he's not lying. The storm came, and he conquered, and he beat Jamal Hill. Nasty slip counter too, I think, hit him with, put him down. I mean, and then you move on to the co-main, which was the Nurmagomedov name getting tarnished. After all this talk, we're so humble, and then they talk crazy in the build-up. Nurmagomedov had a good first and second round, and then cried about a broken hand, even though JDM won the belt with a broken, not won the belt. JDM won his like number one contender fight with a broken arm. He ended up losing the last 3 rounds to Dvalishvili, and Merab was just emoting on him, dunking him on his head, rocking him on the feet. It was cinema to see, you know, a taste of his own medicine, getting out wrestled and just not being able to do anything against your opponent. It made a lot of MMA fans happy, and since then, I mean, Nurmagomedov's kind of bounced back. He didn't look the great. We talked about it earlier. I'm just gonna shut up. And then Makhachev versus Moicano, which it's a Makhachev fight. It's gonna be cool. I like Moicano. What is it? Money Moicano, motherfucker. He's super entertaining. But this was 24 hours notice. Arman Sarukian pulled out because his back hurt, aka he missed weight. Hence why he doesn't have a title shot still after beating Dan Hooker. So that kind of dragged some of the steam out of this card. Excuse me. This is kind of a long video. I figured it would be about 30 minutes. And my mouth's getting dry from talking so much. Sorry about, you know, the swallowing and just adjusting. Stuffy nose as well. But yeah, I put this this card at number 8 just because it delivered. It was good. Nothing really stood out. The short notice replacement in the main event kind of took away from it. But Hill versus Prohaska definitely carried it. And the upset of Nurmagomedov, I don't know if it was an upset, but just the shock of a Nurmagomedov loss in such a way also brought a lot of hype to the card. Just the opening wasn't the strongest. You know, if the opening was a bit stronger, this could probably be top 5. But, yeah, that's where we put it. We move on to number 7, 314. This was a good card, man. You know, the early prelims were decent. I don't know if we saw a finish. It might have all been decisions. The regular prelims were funny, but I think all of them went to a decision. I mean, maybe Elkins got finished. Elkins' fights are always entertaining. That probably brought a lot. You saw Hooper, I think he whooped on Jim Miller for 3 rounds. I made the gooning joke, I think. So that was pretty funny. Jan versus Janarova, blah, blah, blah. Ige versus Woodson had a lot of the bug, like memes going around, which was pretty funny. But the main card is kind of why this is where it is again. Reyes returned on his run. I think he'd want to fight before this. I could be wrong. But I want to say he wanted to fight before this. But he fought Krylov, and we were kind of worried about it because I think I picked Krylov to win, honestly. And Reyes chinned him. It was a huge feel-good moment for Reyes. The MMA community was rejoicing in, you know, the win of Reyes. So you had that. Mitchell was saying a lot, and Gene Silva was also saying a lot. There was a lot of build-up to this with the Globe. There was the foreshadowing of the Diego Lopez fight. There's a lot of edits about that. I'm not going to get into how I feel about the fighters, but that was a funny fight. Now, Rodriguez versus Pitbull kind of brought it down, especially after Rodriguez was calling for a title shot after a 29-28 decision over an Unk from Bellator. So that brought it down, but Paddy Pimblett, I'm not even going to try to do his accent because I'm terrible at it. But Paddy Pimblett just dominated Michael Chandler. Got cracked with 1 or 2 good shots, but beat him up on the feet. He started getting sloppy, got Chandler down, slicing him open, just brutalizing him. It was a great way to get a win. And it hasn't had the greatest weight for his title shot aspirations, but he got one against Gaethje, so it worked. And the main event, of course, Diego Lopez having a great fight, but Volkanovski coming back to cement his legacy after the knockout loss against Ilia Topuria, and Ilia moving up, so he didn't get that fight. He got the Lopez fight, and he did it. He pulled it off. It was such a feel-good moment after the Reyes one. It was an even better feel-good moment. Yeah, seeing Volk win makes every man happy. And that was just, the cherry on top that was this card. This card had good moments. No crazy finishes, but no bad moments. No really dull fights. And it had good name value on the main card. And some good scraps on the early prelims, which is why I have it where it is. Again, all of these can be kind of interchanged. I understand I'm kind of giving the same spiel for a lot of these middle cards. Though there will definitely be a lot more cases, on the ends of the spectrum. But yeah, these could always move a few spots. But I put this at number 7. We move on to number 6. It was UFC 315. I want to say this was in Toronto because there's a lot of Canadian fighters on here. Jack Della Maddalena versus Bilal Muhammad. Crazy main event. Everybody was counting Jack Della out. And he put that pepper on Muhammad over 5 rounds, beat him up, got the belt. It was such a feel-good moment. That was a really good way to top the card off. You had Shevchenko versus Fiorat, who... It was another win for Shevchenko, so there's hype, but it was boring. Santini versus Alvarez fell through, unfortunately. I don't know if they replaced that fight. This is just the photo I found. Grasso versus Silva, I think, was a fun 3-round women's fight. Aldo versus Sahabi was kind of a robbery, but it was an entertaining fight, especially right at the end with Aldo landing that soccer kick, but it was legal because Zahabi was crouched but not grounded. That was entertaining, but it's in the early prelims. I mean, you had Burns versus Morales. Morales put Burns away easy in round one. That's when he broke into I'm about to be next for a title shot, and he beat Brady, so he's up there. You had Jasutovic versus Andrade. I think Jasutovic just won this one. You had Marc-Andre Barriault literally cave a dent in Bruno Silva's skull. Insane. You had Mallet finish Radke. I think he TKO'd him. You had Kutalaba, I think, get a win against Bakauskas. I'm a huge Kutalaba fan. Brad Katona got slept in round 1 by Almacan. I mean, and Sterling had a good scrap with Ursulan. I realized I just covered every fight. But there was nothing bad about many of these fights. The worst thing that happened is it went to a decision. That's a pretty good thing for a card, and I understand it's not the strongest in name value. And it is a bit weird, a mix of fighters, I'll be honest, but it was a really good card, and it delivered. I mean, the JDM win just made it that much sweeter. I understand the main card wasn't the strongest, but we finally saw Aldo say goodbye for the 5th and final time. And the prelims delivered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7, I think, were finishes. So that's a win in my book, and we put it at number 6. We move on to top 5. Here we go. 316. This was a rematch between Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley. Merab cemented it. He got the north-south choke after dominating O'Malley for 2 or 3 rounds, I want to say. So that was pretty entertaining because, you typically associate Merab with a decision, knees against the thigh, some entertaining moments, some aura farming, but no finishes. So when he subbed O'Malley, it was pretty hype, like, okay, he's getting better, he cemented it. O'Malley can't really make excuses now or kind of have that buffer zone of, like, he didn't really beat me that some of his fans were coping with. You had Pena versus Harrington, which wasn't a great fight, but it was funny as hell. There was a lot of, man impressions about Harrison, which are always funny to hear. Sorry, Harrison, it's funny. She did get the sub over Pena. It was decisive. Seeing Pena yap as much as she has off of one fluke win over Amanda Nunes has never made me happy to see her lose. You had a good scrap like Gastelum versus Pfeiffer. Coughing Baby versus Hydrogen Bomb. He just couldn't go out. You had Batista getting upset by, you had Pechi Mix, former champion, getting upset by Batista after talking crazy. It's always great to see a Bellator guy lose, especially when he's talking about how bad the UFC is, because you're just like, dude, you're just turning the whole organization, everything against you. So that was a good win. You had Holland versus Luque. Holland got the sub. He got the Darce over the Darce Knight and Luque. That was an upset. You, again, had future flyweight champion Joshua Van. That was a good scrap against Silva. I mean, I'm not going to go through every fight, but you can see Sal killed the minority hunter. Gustafsson was a tank in that fight. His fight recently didn't go well, but great card. Pretty strong name value. You got Salsa Boy right there. Mirzakhanov on his way up. Wen Kong, she's an entertaining striker coming back off a loss, I think it was. This was a good card. It delivered. There were finishes, and when there wasn't finishes, there was really good decisions. There was entertaining fights. There was knockouts. There was scraps. There was just slugfest, like at 125, Silva versus Vaughn. This was a really good fight card, topped off by the finish of Merab over Sean after the finish of Harrison over Pena. I think that's a great way to end the card. It didn't stand out to be, anywhere in 1, 2, or 3, but all the cards here are amazing. 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10 in all honesty. We're going to move on to number 4. I have UFC 320. Now, personally, I wanted to put this higher, but these prelims are what's holding it back. Now, let me tell you, most of these went to a decision. They weren't the most entertaining. This was a sacrifice to the lamb. It was entertaining. This was hilarious because he got fraud checked even harder. But these were good fights. I mean, I'm a Magomedov fan, even though he's not good. Something about him, I just like, this guy's kind of cool. I like him. He had a close fight with Pfeiffer. He got tired. I think Pfeiffer wanted a decision, so that was a good way to open up the card. Zalal getting the quick triangle finish at the triangle armbar switch submission over Emmett. He did call for a title shot, which was annoying. Emmett doesn't get you a title shot, but finishing a guy like Emmett, despite him being old, is still impressive nonetheless, so that was fun. But like I said, when Prohashka's on the card, it's going to be a good card. This fight was even more entertaining because it looked like he was losing. He was losing in round 1 and arguably round 2. Khalil's faster. He was getting the jab off, leg kicks, and Yuri didn't get his timing right. And then come round 3, it's that It's that storm he builds. It's that samurai mentality he brings into that third round. And he's gonna give you everything and more. He's gonna throw the kitchen sink at you and then some. I mean, and that finishing sequence is disgusting. 1, 2, just that pause for a second of anticipation, and then the hook that slept Khalil like a video game character, like a tree going down in the forest after getting chopped. It was beautiful. It was a great feature fight for the main event. It single-handedly made the entire night. And then the fights to come made it even better. I mean, the co-main, Sandhagen looked like he had Merab figured out in round 1. And then round 2, Merab almost gets a KO. Merab Dvalishvili almost getting a KO. We saw the sub over Shaw, but we didn't think he had power. He puts a barrage on Sandhagen. Sandhagen survives, and I was rooting, so that hurt to watch. But it went to a decision. But Merab showed that he was getting better and that he wasn't invincible as well with Sandhagen, fighting a really good first round against him. So that was kind of got you, entertained. And then the main event, Shama. We were all worried that this card was going to get stunk up with another, just a redo of what happened the first time with Ankalaev just out wrestling him. But Pereira said, "Look, man, I was sick then. I'm not going back to the tire shop now." And he sleeps Magomed Ankalaev in round 1. He didn't sleep him, but he hit him so bad that Ankalaev shit his pants and crawled to the floor trying to grab Alex's foot, and then just sat there doing nothing, getting elbowed in the head and the ribs, and quit. It was cinema after how Ankalaev talked before and after the first Pereira fight. You didn't do anything to win that fight. Arguably, Pereira could have won it, and he showed that in this fight, that he was sick that night, that he is better than you, and that he is the light heavyweight champion, and you are not, buddy. Back of the line. You can see how happy I am reminiscing on this fight. I think most MMA fans would agree that this is a top 5 card. Some could even argue top 3. I just felt like the other cards had a better prelims that kind of rounded it out together. But again, an insane card, a great end for UFC 320. We move on to the third pick. This, top 3 can honestly kind of be switched through all different reasoning, but 322 was a pretty good card. Opened up, you had Santos get the win. Abdul Malik, it took him a second, but he beat the shit out of Chirkoli, subbed him, I think it was. You had the barn burner of Ibo Aslan versus Iwo Barnawinowski, or whatever it is. That was one of the craziest rounds of all time. I mean, it was rock'em sock'em, he's dropped, and he finished him. It was insane. The place went insane. As an early prelim, you don't see that too often. And then you had the return of Jalen Turner. I mean, close fight with Barboza. Or not even close. He brutalized Barboza in the first round, cut him open, TKO'd him. It was insane. Vittori versus Freya was just a chin fest. It was all on the early prelims. And then you get into the prelims. Fares Diam always has an entertaining fight. Silva versus Barber kind of killed the momentum. McKinney, kill or be killed, got killed against Duncan. Torres getting the chinning over Dawson. And this isn't even on the main card. I mean, really entertaining finishes from these people. And then we move on to the main card. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be a Jan Blachowicz fight without a weird outcome. So that draw was a bit unfortunate. And then you had Talbot Ora farming after beating an Olympic wrestler and Henry Cejudo for his final retirement. Crazy upset. Not crazy upset. I guess he was the favorite. But a knockout TKO of Moreno from Tyro, which we thought would be a sub or decision via grappling. It was a controversial finish, but still an insane upset. And then the upset of the night. God, these are all upsets. I'm not going to say, I got to shut up. But Pantoja versus Vaughn did kind of spoil the card. I think that's why it's the third spot. If that fight had a good outcome, via finish or could argue number 2, number 1. But Vaughn, on previous cards as a contender, won the championship belt via TKO, which I don't think it was. But it created a lot of hype around the flyweight division, which you don't see often. It stirred up potential what is Pantoja's legacy now. You had the beef with DJ when he was kind of people were kind of being oh, you're sly and you're happy that your resume sticks up and your legacy is safe because Pantoja had a freak accident. So there was some beef there. That was an entertaining week or two on the internet. And then you had, I'm going to call it the upset. After their first fight, in which Jan defended 26, 27 of 50 takedowns against Merab Dvalishvili, again, he said he had a broken arm, like the Pereira Magomed Ankalaev fight. He said he had something wrong with him, and nobody believed him. He got trolled for it, but he fought his way back. He had a great 2025, beat Marcus McGee, beat Song Yadong, beat Davidson Figueiredo, and got this rematch and showed that he was hurt in that first fight, and he whooped Merab's ass. Merab won round 1. He did not win round 2, that one judge, and then Peter Yan schooled him for 4 rounds. I mean, beating him on the feet, beating him in the clinch, nasty body kicks, making Merab go, ugh! When he got hit with him. I mean, he was brutalizing Dvalishvili, landing his own takedowns. Merab was all busted up at the end of the fight. And Merab was chasing legacy, so it was respectful. He was trying to set, 4 title defenses in a year? Never been done before. It might have been, I think it was 4. But an insane upset for Yan, and it was such a feel-good moment because the trajectory of the UFC was butterfly affected so hard by the Peter Yan D over Aljamain Sterling. So this was such a feel-good moment to see. And he got the tough road. He didn't get 1 win, 2 good wins, bounce back. He 1, 2, 3 wins. And he took on Marcus McGee. He was like number 11 ranked. You didn't need to do that, Peter. But he went out of his way to do it because he knew he needed to cement that title shot against a guy like Merab, who's looked insanely dominant. So this was such a feel-good moment for Yan, and it spiced up the 135 division. We got Umar, we got Yan, we got Merab, and I think they're going to do the trilogy. So this card just ended on a really positive note, despite the sour note that was the co-main. But the prelims held up, delivered crazy finishes, and that's why I have it at number 3. We move on to second place, and this will kind of give away what first place is. I have UFC 322. If the main and co-main were entertaining, this would be number 1. There, I said it. We'll start from the bottom. Boring. Finish, but nobody really knows. Malcolm Wellmaker. Represent Georgia. Lost. He didn't lose to City. He lost to a short notice regional champion replacement in Ethan Ewing, who's also a very fun, entertaining, scrappy fighter. So this wasn't a huge stock drop of Wellmaker, and it was a huge stock gain in Ethan Ewing. It was hype for both guys. It was a scrap. Like, Wellmaker was never out of the fight, but he was always a step behind, but it was still entertaining to see him land some shots. Ewing was landing good shots. He wasn't, grappling to win. It wasn't boring. It was super entertaining. That was a good way to kind of open up the prelims. Yotsu Sorkayev getting a crazy KO in, I think, round 2. I think it was round 3 over Makanako. Nickel getting a head kick. I think Nickel was on the main card. We bullied him off the main card of the prelims, and he gets a head kick KO. He's improving. Kopylov versus Rodriguez was a scrap. Dariush versus Santini, I think, fell through. No. Oh, my God. Dariush got chinned in the first exchange in the pocket with Santini. He lands like a uppercut, hook, sleeps Dariush out cold. Benoit Santini just keeps delivering, whether it's a win or a lose. I mean, he's the hammer, he's the nail. Blanchfield versus Cortez was funny. Prates versus Edwards. This was the highlight of the night, in my opinion. Because Leon Edwards is a former champ. He beat Usman by finish and then decisively beat him by decision. And this is the guy that we're talking about giving a title shot to Makhachev. And Edwards decisively beat him twice. So there was a lot going into this. Is Prates really that good? Is Leon really that bad? Did he just have a good performance? Like, there was a lot going into this. And I picked Prates to win, and he did it. He chinned Edwards round 1, round 2. I think it was round 2 because Edwards grappled in round 1. Round 2, Prates, they're having fun, and you see Edwards do the hand like, what? Mercedes AMG, what? You see him put his hands up, and you know that when you're fighting a guy like Carlos Prates, who is a bit kind of emoty, against Radke, he did like a, oh, and then kneed him in the stomach. Like, you don't play into that game. It's the Gene Silva thing. Don't play into the emotes, the talk. Don't do it. Gets you out of your game, even if you're like, whatever he throws, I'm blocking. But you're just not. And that's what happened. Edwards does the, what? Not 5-10 seconds later, Prates just goes for it. Steps in, leaps on his foot, straight down the pipe, chins Edward, sends Edward off his feet, sets down, falls back, his head snaps back, bounces back up, and he's smiling while unconscious. His eyes are open, but he's not there. Nobody's home. Lights are on, nobody's home, and he's smiling. It was beautiful. It was cinema. It was a great feature fight for the card after, a good opening, finishes, and decisions and whatnot. And then we got to move on to the co-main, which wasn't as entertaining. It was Shevchenko camping half guard, camping crucifix, side control for 5 rounds, and Zhang just being too small to do anything about it. That's all I'm going to say about that fight. And the same thing for Makhachev. He just laid on top. He did the Hamzat thing. He was a bit better about it. He was a bit more active with it. I think JDM probably had an injury based on the pain on his face from like round 1, round 2. But he never disclosed it because that'd be an excuse. But Makhachev would get the takedown and then just knock at the finish. I mean, Della Maddalena had a guy like Craig Jones on his side, and Craig isn't a wrestling coach, so I don't want to see people crapping on it, but he avoided all of Makhachev's semi-attempts of a submission and not get called for stalling, but he sat in half guard for 19 minutes. It was boring, dude. He didn't even land ground and pound. He just did the, half guard, lockdown, just boring! And I stand by that. Other than that, the co-main and the main, the rest of the card was gold, you know what I mean? But this video is getting long. Let me shut up. Let's move on to the number 1 card. UFC 317. Now, this card is nothing special. You can honestly disagree with me. I get it. My brain's pretty fried just from the holiday season, so maybe I'm not thinking straight. But I have this as my number 1 just because quality, names, delivery, I guess. So the card opens up with Hines versus Deniz. That was a good fight. Nobody got finished, but it was 2 big guys slugging it out. It was entertaining. It was Hines' debut. Like, it was just a cool way to open a card. It was a fun scrap. And then you had Price versus Smith. It took a minute, but Smith got the finish. McKinney versus Borshev. McKinney beats the shit out of Borshev, finishes him. Cortez gets the sub over Araujo. I know a lot of guy fans are fans of Cortez. Delgado sleeps Amir in 26 seconds. It was absolutely insane. And then Rodriguez putting Hermanson out ice cold and landing a unnecessary, disgusting, pathetic excuse of a follow-up shot. But still an insane KO. And these are all prelims. I mean, finish, decision. 5 out of the first 6 fights had a finish. And they were 1 sub, the rest were KO. Like, KO. Cinema. That's all I can say. I mean, and then we get to the main card. You had Talbot bounce back against Harney. Talbot had to bounce back against his loss from Harney Barcelos against, it wasn't Diego. I think it was Felipe Lima. Felipe didn't have a lot of good IQ in this fight, but it was a fun fight. They were scrambling against each other, scrapping. And it was a good win for Talbot. It was like, yeah, Talbot's back. He didn't get the finish, but he looked good technically on the feet, on the ground. It was just a feel-good moment. You had Moicano versus Dariush, which was kind of an unk fest, but Moicano getting the knockdown in round 1 had hype. And then it went to a decision, but it was this fight right here, man. It was Royval versus Vaughn. I remember where, when, and what I was doing when this fight happened. It was insane. This fight was 3 rounds, and I think I had like record flyweight numbers, maybe record striking numbers of all time. It was a scrap between the 2 of them, and it finished with Vaughn getting I felt like it was louder than UFC 300, Gaethje versus Holloway. I mean, that knockdown right at the end of round 3, amidst, the scrap was just, you can't write something better than that. And I think that moment put it in the top 3, regardless of what happened. And then the co-main and main, just cherry on top, number 1 here, laid out on a platter, red carpet. I really do think that these fights, the last 3 fights of the card made the entire card number 1. Because then you had Pantoja versus Cara France. And after the whole Haka Cordy thing that Cara France did, the entire build-up, Pantoja sleeps him out cold with a rear naked, and it adds to Pantoja's legacy. It was super entertaining. It was hype. It was a finish at flyweight. You don't see a lot of those. Pantoja brings violence. He's aggressive. He pushes forward. It's always a good time when Pantoja's in the ring, unless it's his most recent fight. Otherwise, it's a sad time. But it was a great co-main, and then the main event. Now, this hurt a lot of people's, feelings. I'm a huge Charlie Olives fan. This did hurt to see, but it cemented double champ for Topuria. It kind of cleared up lightweight. It did put us in the shtick we're in right now, but Topuria versus Oliveira, cinema. With Islam leaving 55, we could have seen that. Oliveira was a great choice with this fight. It pulled at the heartstrings of a lot of fans. But it was an impressive way to cap off the year. I think round 1, round 2. I think it was round 1. Topuria KO'd. No, it was round 2. Round 2, sorry. Round 2, Topuria KO's Oliveira. Nasty, just kind of hook 2 down the pipe in the pocket when Olives is in there. Sleeps him out cold. It's heartbreaking for a lot of fans to watch, but it's a nasty finish. It's a double champ moment, and it's violence, which is what we look for as UFC fans. That is my 2025 pay-per-view year rankings. If you violently disagree with me, please let me know without telling me to kill myself. Let me know your rankings, if you would switch any If you felt like maybe a card was a fight or two off from greatness, just whatever y'all thought. I understand this is a pretty long video, so if anybody makes it to the end of the video, thank you guys so much for watching. I was thinking about leaving timestamps. Like, I just had like a brain think moment. Like, should I leave timestamps for them to like find what my actual ranking is? But no, I'm not gonna do that. You guys need to know why I'm putting these where I am, because if you just look at my rankings and you go, he put this, why? What an idiot! And then you leave my channel, you didn't give me the chance to explain myself, so I'm not giving you the chance to do that. Not my loyal fans, y'all wouldn't do this, but I'll go ahead and shut up. I've been yapping for a minute here. I'm probably going insane. But yeah, that's my list. If you hate it, let me know. If you love it, let me know. If you couldn't care less, you won't let me know to begin with. But yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. If you made it to this moment, sorry if I was yapping there. But like, comment, share, subscribe. I hope y'all are doing well during this break. See ya.